Hey everyone, this is Kevin McGowie back with Jared Fosnot for our third minicast here at Washington Capital Partners, the DC metro area's premier hard money lenders. Just to start off today, we're going to be talking the first of probably many times we talk about condo conversions. Today, we're going to talk about, as a beginner, what are some things that you need to look out for to make sure that your first condo conversion is very profitable so that your first is not your last. And reminder that Washington Capital Partners has created an ebook that can be downloaded and will be linked wherever you find this mini cast. So welcome.
Awesome. Yeah, excited to get back to another successful mini cast. I've been enjoying my time hanging with you the last couple times.
Yeah.
Nice. We do it. We record in the morning, so it's a nice kickoff to the day. But anytime that you're watching this, hopefully you get a lot of value out of it.
Sure. Yeah. So last time you brought up the area Buzzard Point as an area to watch. That's going to have a lot of upcoming new residential homes going in, new condos and stuff like that, right? And so I think that's the perfect place to kick this off with condos, especially in the DC marketplace, because it is an important thing to understand that if you're looking from the outside in, it may be hard to understand how important the condo conversion is to this area. But in 2016, it is 1900 Half Street was a abandoned building that was converted into over 400 condos. So this is a abandoned office building that is converted into condos, and it just goes to show how many condos are coming to market in this area, and the phenomenon of creating condos out of something that really wasn't before. I know that when Dwight Howard was living here, he was living in a converted schoolhouse. He was on the penthouse of a converted schoolhouse. And we have other properties that used to be things like churches that are turning into condos all around the city and stuff like that. I know we'll continue to see that, not just the conversion, which is a great thing, but also development, as in taking one house, turning it into multiple houses, multiple condos, and taking other plots of land that have previously been undeveloped or were developed as commercial, turning them into mixed use. So can you talk about basically why it's such an important part of DC's marketplace to continue to have those different properties being converted into condos?
Yeah, so I mean, we've seen a huge evolution of Buzzard Point. That's kind of the natural evolution of the wharf and traveling further down in that waterfront area. That's all going to continue to convert to high level development, lots of condos, lots of multifamily, sprinkle in some single families. To answer your question, I think I don't know, but I think the answer is condo conversions and condos in general are important because it's one of the fastest ways to get more housing stock. And if you look at a lot of statisticians, economists, we're going to need a heck of a lot of housing stock over the next 10 years. We're talking like hundreds of thousands of units. And how best to do that at scale? Well, that's condos, right? Big multifamily buildings, taking single family houses, converting row houses into multiple condos. Really banking on the wonderful zoning laws that DC allows for to create more density. And just generally, there's only so much land in DC. DC is not getting any bigger anytime soon. I don't think they're going to annex Arlington, Virginia, which was historically way back part of DC. But yeah, I mean, the land, they're not making more of it. So, at some point, just like New York City, everything has to go up. And we're seeing, a lot of these assets that were functionally obsolete, become converted and really increase the value of neighboring properties, neighboring assets. And it's going to be a trend that I think, frankly, the condo trend and multifamily trend is only going to continue to be pushed further along by COVID in a lot of ways. Like one trend that I saw heavily was, adaptive reuse, right? So taking things like office buildings, old office buildings that just were not being 100% utilized to their full capacity, and converting those to multi-units, multi-family condos. And I think, I think COVID has really put a smackdown on the commercial world of real estate. I do think it's going to come back eventually. I think human beings are social creatures. I think, whenever this whole pandemic thing is over, if it is ever over, we will go back to being more social, and you're going to have a need for some kind of in-person office space. It's never going to be completely remote everything, I don't personally think. And that means that there's going to be a lot of office space that gets unused and drives the price down of office. So it'll be easy to flip that into another better utilized asset.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And all the new apartments that are being built that are going in those old office spaces are going to be the kind of work from home friendly type places that we now know that we might need more so. And not even that it is a need. There's a lot of people that, they don't know when they're going back to work. And for those of us that are lucky enough to work at home, we don't know when we're going back to work, if we're going back this year at all. So you need to have a spot like I have right here, like you're sitting in right now, an office or a den where you can find that space to get your work done. But yeah, I think it's a trend that's going to be taking over everywhere. But again, that's for a big developer, right? To take a huge office building and turn it into a bunch of condos is something that might be a little more advanced for the people that are watching this. They're going to be looking more for single family homes, plots of land, things like that to convert to condos, whether that's a 1 to 2 unit conversion, whether that's a 3 to 8 unit conversion, which is something that we see a lot, or 4 to 8 unit conversion is something that we see a lot. Can you talk a little about, what we should be looking for, what a beginner should be looking for in DC to convert more attainable than those big conversions that we like to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for reining me in. I get a little overexcited talking about all the big time development, but no, for the person that's just starting out, that's obviously what we're talking about more. There's always going to be an evolution. So it's cool to have goals and say, maybe that's down the road. But what's a really cool space in DC is the quote unquote like boutique condo project, which, we generally classify between 2 and maybe 10 units. Sometimes you'll see that like basically the threshold between requiring IZ units. At a certain point, you do have to have IZ units, which just means that you have an affordable units in there. And obviously that has a big effect because, you'll be pricing that unit, you generally at a suppressed price. So you have to make sure that your pro forma works well with that. But to answer your question, what to look out for, the beauty of this is there's thousands of row homes in DC, right? And the majority of them are in zoned to allow by right the ability to convert at least into 2 units, right? RA1 is one of those very, very popular zones in the city. And by right, you could take a single family condo and you can convert it into 2 units. And what by right means, this is a good little intro to this, is you don't have to go through the Board of Zoning Appeals, AKA BZA, to get a zoning variance in order to be able to build it, right? You don't have to submit to public discourse in the neighborhood and the surrounding area to, basically allow for this to happen and get the sign off from neighbors and what have you, who may not want to have that higher density. So, this is an evolution, right? Like back in 2012, 2013, when I was, just getting going on the development side, before I jumped over here, the zoning designation was allowed by right a larger number of units. And so people were creating, these giant stacks, in the middle of like just single families.
The middle finger building.
The middle finger building, not to be too vulgar here, but it was a real, it got people's blood boiling, because I mean, you're just driving down the road and you see all these normal row houses and there's this massive 5-story building. I mean, it looks ridiculous, right? So as soon as some developers started doing that, the city, everybody kind of clamped down on it, rightfully so. And so, if we're going to allow for this further, density to happen, let's do it at a reasonable growth, right? Where all the buildings can be uniform and everything like that. Now, obviously, DC has its, unlike most other cities, the height restrictions are pretty strong in the laws that are written. Yeah, I mean, it's that's definitely one thing to keep an eye out for.
Yeah. So the besides obviously looking to do conversions like that, the other thing that a lot of people we see doing are taking already existing buildings, like especially in Northeast, we see a lot of this in Ivy City specifically, where they'll take a 4-unit, and this is a little more of an advanced move, they'll take a 4-unit building, they'll dig down, make the basement into a more livable, usable space. They can put units in there, and they'll add a level on top. And that, that flows with the community. It doesn't look weird, as we were talking about with what used to go on and stuff like that. So that's a little more advanced. You're going from 4 to 8 or 9. We see a lot of those as well. The one thing that we didn't talk about, and I'll circle back real quick. I always pull a stat before these. So,
what's the stat? What do we got?
So the stat this time is people are actually moving out of the cities. We know the urban exodus is something that's really important that everyone's talking about. Any news source is talking about the urban exodus, right? People leaving the cities. But DC is such a unique feature that if you're going to be putting condos out on market now, they are going to sell. So you want to look for these things, because although we had 49% more condos brought to market at the end of last year compared to other years of the past few years, there's still less inventory than there have been in the past few years. So 49% more are coming to market, and they're selling, because although people are leaving, people are moving back just as fast, if not faster.
The demand is high. Yeah, people forget. I mean, this is at its core is a supply demand kind of thing. But like the housing stock, supply and demand. The people, the migration and flow of people is supply and demand. I mean, yeah, absolutely. New administration just came in. There's a big influx of people and people leaving the DC area. So we see this, especially around every 4 years or every 8 years. So this isn't anything new for sure. There's always going to be people leaving, and maybe that number of people leaving due to COVID is higher, or more millennials now that are getting to the stage of having families and want a little bit more space, bigger or whatever the case is. That's me. I'm in that camp on the older side of the millennial generation. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna see that for sure. There's going to be new, young folks moving in, young professionals. So it's always a flow. But yeah, to your point, the demand has been super high. Supply has been super low. We have seen, I just do want to point this out. We have seen a little bit of a slump in the condo world, especially on the high end condo side. And by slump, I mean, it's taking longer to sell a little bit. And by high end, I mean like 750 plus on the units. So, I mean, people do, if you're just starting out, it would be my strategy to target out sales of under 750, maybe even under 500. And that just means that you're picking the right neighborhoods that support those exits for those condos. Exactly. Or maybe they're just the particular types of units. Maybe they're 1-bedroom, 1-baths that naturally allow for those lower price points. So
right.
I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Like unit mix, should you be focused on one bedroom, or is it better to have multiple because of families, or like any thoughts on that?
So anytime you hear me speak in any situation, whether it's about condos or about single family homes, I'll always preach that you want to be, when you're starting out, because you're going to make mistakes, right? When you're starting out, you want to be pricing, you want your end product to be priced in an area that anybody can buy. So you don't want to be selling $1 million condo as your first condo conversion. You want to be sticking to, exactly as you said, hopefully 500 and below, which is why Ivy City is such a great area. If you're going to do something there, you're going to price even your penthouse probably under $500,000. And people are moving there because it's a booming area. I mentioned this in the last cast as well. I'm in the Union Market District, and we have a bunch of different, like we had talked about at the beginning, we have a bunch of different commercial spaces, warehouse space specifically, that's not being used, that's being demolished, and huge apartment, not condo building specific, but apartment buildings are going in. Some people are going to want to buy here. So the condo conversions that are happening nearby are being very successful, especially because you can still sell them for, like we said, 500 and below. So you said 750 and below. That's specifically the luxury condo cutoff. I think maybe even lower.
I totally agree with you. I threw that out on the luxury side, but yeah, I think 500 and lower is really where you want to be. It's if you put that in context, like I just bought a home in Reston, out further in the suburbs, whether it's Maryland, Southern Maryland, Northern Virginia, you can get a lot more house. I mean, when you start comparing, a $750,000, $1 million condo to what you could buy, like a single family detached house or a townhouse. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing that, those prices are there, but, it is a function of supply and demand. And, I think, yeah. So, and another thing that popped into mind when you were just talking about that was, another strategy that I'm seeing a lot more is people doing condo conversions, generally more than 2 units, like 3 to 9, 10, and then actually selling those off and holding one of the units. The reason this sparked in my mind is because we're talking about just the basic supply and demand economics. And we've just seen like literally trillions of dollars flood the market. We're going to see an insane amount of inflation over the next 10 years. Like 2008, 2009, we put, a sliver of what we've put in now. And it led to the biggest bull market of all time for 10 years, roughly. And so what does that say? How's that going to affect the market for the next 10 years and asset prices? So I think people should be in hard assets because your dollar value is going to just be absolutely obliterated. And maybe, as you're starting out, that is something that you should think about. That's something that I wouldn't have thought about when I was starting out. No. You just think, okay, I'm going to buy, I'm buying this and fixing it. I'm going to sell all these units. But maybe one of the strategies you could take is an easy way to get into a rental, a new, a first-time rental, or add to your rental portfolio, or even live there if you like the area or like the building that you just built.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a great way to get into having a rental, having an asset to hold on to. You build, whether it's 2 or 3 units or more, sell off the units, and hopefully you cover your complete debt with those sales. And you're stuck holding a property that you didn't have to purchase at all, because that property, building it, was your profit. The property is what you get to hold on the back end. That's a great idea. So I think you and I could probably sit here and chat about it for a very long time, but we still haven't actually talked about what are the things to look out for. We've talked about it is the time to do it. There's nothing to be scared of right now that we're seeing, right? It's a great idea to get into it. They are selling. People, although there's an urban exodus, we still have people coming in and buying, especially if they're priced right. What it specifically you should be looking for, right? But what should you be beware of? Buyer beware.
Buyer beware. So I think some of that obviously is in the buy, right? You make your money in the buy. Everybody hears that so often, and part of that with condo conversions is making sure that you fully understand what you're buying. The biggest misstep that I see with people buying condos is, and especially when they're coming with plans and permits, is they don't know what they're buying. They don't know what they're getting into. One, with the architect, right? Was this architect, really terrible? How responsive are they? If you have to make changes to it and edits to the plans, are they going to even respond to you? Are you going to have to pay them a bunch of money to respond? Do they? I've seen a lot of architects kind of slow down in the city, to be honest with you, because there's so many projects going on. So really do your homework on the architect if you're buying it with plans and permits, and verify that you can actually build what you can build. I've heard horror stories. I know you've experienced horror stories where what you thought was approved might not be approved. So do your due diligence before you buy. That's the biggest thing you can do. And I know that's easier said than done because when somebody's put a property on market or off market, there's going to be competition and there's going to be pressures that make you feel like you have to move very quickly to buy something, and that there's to that. So have your team in place so that you can do your due diligence quickly and efficiently, and not lose out on the properties and have analysis paralysis, but still watch your back and make sure that the plans and permits are absolutely correct.
Yeah, you got to do your homework is what it comes down to, right? So take a look at every single property that comes across your desk. If it's a condo conversion and a wholesaler sends it to you, run the numbers, send it to your loan officer, send it to me, send it to you, have us go through the numbers with you, have us realistically break down whether or not it's a good deal. We'll do that with you, or you can do it with whoever your lender is. Hopefully it's us, one of the two of us, or anyone else at Washington Capital Partners. But yeah, you got to do your homework. You got to know exactly what to expect from your lender. We see a lot of issues with when people are like, wait, I didn't know this was how the draw schedule was set up. Well, we went over that with you before closing, things like that. We should have done it more times, apparently. The biggest thing is the most homework that needs to be done is on your contractor 1A and your architect 1B, exactly as you said. Yeah. So that I had a lot of issues with my architect, specifically on my deal. The biggest thing is responsiveness for me, but if I could have gone back and done it again, I wouldn't have accepted the referral from the person who had recently been trying to sell a different condo conversion to me, right? So that person had said, oh, this person's already started on the plans, you can just take over. Okay, so this person is an architect who is doing plans in the city already. We know that. This is a reputable investor. So I thought I didn't have to check anymore. What I should have done is I should have went around and asked anyone who I knew who had ever done a condo conversion if they had used this person.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
a lot of money saved and time saved.
No doubt. And honestly, like sometimes it's not even done maliciously. It's just, people are not going to do the level of due diligence that you will ever do. Like they're not doing the condo conversion. They're either selling it to you or they're the agent. And anytime that another person stands to make money on a deal, I mean, there is just an inherent potential for them to push it and pressure and want you to do the deal. And,
right.
So, they're not going to have the same level of interest in your success as you do as a person. So protect yourself. You are your best asset. That's a great idea of asking people about the architect. Ask everybody in the industry that you know.
Anyone who will talk to you.
Yeah, everybody will talk to you. Trust me. It's a small market, DC. There's a lot of gossip, so it's not like this is hush hush or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
So the last thing that we definitely need to talk about right now, especially if you're getting into it now, is we brought this up last time in our minicast as well. The biggest problem that people are running into right now is the cost of lumber is really going up. So just my last little tidbit before we go. And again, first of many, I'm sure that we'll talk about when it comes to condo conversions, but whatever your contractor is telling you right now for the price of lumber, especially when you're doing something in which you're adding square footage, make sure that you double check those prices because the price of lumber is still skyrocketing as we speak as a result of not only COVID, but forest fires actually right now.
Forest fires, just the general slowness and problems with the supply chain across the U.S. That's the lumber more so, and materials in general are now. I'm hearing more and more from contractors that it's actually flipped, where before, the most expensive part of the project was the labor cost, and you could, through economies of scale, get cheaper material costs, but now it's flip-flopped. So the materials are more expensive than even the labor. So yeah, really great point. And I want to do this more often. I'm very excited. I love talking about condo conversions. I mean, I have a list of stuff that we didn't even hit. So we should definitely put another one of these on the calendar for condo conversions next time or down the road. But we've got plenty of other pitfalls, things to look out for. So yeah, super excited about that.
Yeah, we'll be back soon. We want to make this weekly. So we'll be back soon. I think next week we'll be talking about rentals, but may have to swing back around to condo conversions very soon.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time, Mr. Fosnot.
Of course, this is always good. Always good to be in your presence. And hopefully, the audience, anybody listening, got some value out of this.
Absolutely. Well, once again, this is Kevin McGowie and Jared Fosnot with Washington Capital Partners. Reach out to us for any of your hard money needs.
Awesome. Thanks.